I love poetry. I love poetry so much that I've brought you here to my office and to my poetry shelf, which is part of our library. As you can see, I have 2 full shelves. These are all the poetry books I've collected over the years, and some of them are duplicates because we also have a few books that belong to the rest of my family in here, and they love poetry too. I've loved poetry since I was very young. My father particularly encouraged me to like poetry, and when I was 7 he gave me 2 books. They were this one, Spike Milligan's Silly Verse for Kids, and Hilaire Belloc's Selected Cautionary Verses. I can still remember some of the poems from these. You can see how old they are and how well loved. I think probably my earliest memory of memorising a poem was from Spike Milligan, and my father used to love this one. Today I saw a little worm a-wriggling on his belly. Perhaps he'd like to come inside and see what's on the telly. Who can fail to love that? It's silly, it's short, it rhymes a bit. It's very captivating and very easy to learn, and it makes you smile. I love that one. And this book, the long poems about young people like Matilda, who used to set fire to things, and Jim, who was eaten by a lion. Jim, who ran away from his nurse and was eaten by a lion. There was a boy whose name was Jim. His friends were very good to him. They gave him tea and cakes and jam and slices of delicious ham and chocolate with pink inside and little tricycles to ride, and read him stories through and through, and even took him to the zoo. But there it was the dreadful fate befell him, which I now relate. Again, pretty memorable. But I think one of my favourite books, my most precious books here, is T.S. Eliot's Old Possum's Book of Practical Cats, about all the imaginary cats that live by the railway and who inspired the musical Cats. There's a whistle down the line at 11:39 and the night mail's ready to depart, saying, "Skimble, where is Skimble? Has he gone to hunt the thimble? We must find him, or the train can't start." All the guards and all the porters and the station master's daughters, they are searching high and low. Again, very memorable. So I was brought up loving poetry, and it wasn't a surprise that I started writing it myself. The first poem I wrote was called "The Breeze Am I," and I wrote that when I was still at primary school. My teacher liked it and suggested that I read it out to the whole class. I went on to write all sorts of fairly ridiculous poems. One I remember was called "Dogs," that began, "Dogs are quite the nicest pets that anyone can own, for you never hear them grumble and you never hear them moan." Perhaps not my finest work, but the first poem I wrote that really was okay, I wrote when I was 14, and I've just found it again in this scrapbook, which is dated 1978, when I had preserved it. And this poem I wrote for an original poem competition, for a local drama competition, and I won. I don't even need to look at it. It's called Armagh. Amidst the desolation, destruction and despair in the county of Armagh, people have to stay aware. Though how can they forget the pain and misery they endure when all they want is to be together, stay secure? Bullets fall, some shatter panes. The gunman knows that he's to blame. The broken hearts and ruined homes prove that no one grieves alone. It helps to raise the rising death toll. When a little boy is playing football, people notice little things. In this battle, no one wins. I continued to write poems and to keep them for many years, and still write them to this day. And then in 2009, when it was my parents' golden wedding anniversary, I decided I would actually make an anthology of my poetry and publish it myself. And it was in fact the first book I self-published in March 2019. No, it wasn't. It was March 2009, like I said earlier. Anyway, here's a collection of all the poems I've written, and my son Sam took the photograph on the front cover of me on a beach in Cape Town, South Africa. And I'm quite proud of this one. And if any of you would like to buy it, it is available on Amazon and available on Kindle, if you would so like. So, I love poetry. I have some very old books and I have some very new. One of my new favourite poets is Cecil Rajendra, who is Penang's poet. And then there is Anthony Anaxagorou, who you will find very prolific on YouTube, reading his own works, because he is a performance poet. And he also takes his poetry into prisons to inspire the inmates to explore poetry too and learn to express themselves. Poetry can uplift, poetry can allow you to express yourself, poetry can heal, poetry can be soothing, and I actually even have another book which isn't on this shelf called The Poetry Pharmacy, because there are people who believe that there can be a poem to cure every ailment. And so, for this week's lesson, I'm going to invite you to have a go at writing a poem for yourselves. You may be used to writing poetry, you may not, but I'm going to make it easy for you. We're going to take a poem that already exists. This is Just to Say by William Carlos Williams, and you're going to change some of the words in it. I do hope you enjoy this exercise, and I hope that you find the lesson fun. I found it fun writing it.
This is just to say, I have eaten the plums which were in the icebox and which you were probably saving for breakfast. Forgive me, they were delicious, so sweet and so cold.